Um, another short lecture this day about antidiuretic hormone. So we'll quickly look at antidiuretic hormone, and then we'll look at its importance and its actions, and possibly the medical conditions that are associated with ADH secretion. So we'll begin with antidiuretic hormone, ADH itself. Now, ADH is a hormone, a 9 peptide hormone that is synthesized by the hypothalamus, and then following synthesis, it is transported to the pituitary, particularly the posterior pituitary, where it is stored. And then anytime there's a need for ADH, maybe there's a signal for ADH release, ADH is secreted from the pituitary into the circulation, where to be transported to wherever it needs to take action. That's ADH. Now, ADH is also known as vasopressin. Why is it called vasopressin? Because ADH also has its direct effect on the blood vessels. So when ADH is acting on the blood vessels, it is known as vasopressin. Now, ADH plays a very important role in the control of the osmotic balance of the body. It plays a very important role in the control of blood pressure, and also in association with the RAS system, it plays a role in sodium homeostasis or sodium balance. So overall, ADH also has its role to play in the proper functioning of the kidney. Now, so we could say that ADH is involved in water balance in the body. ADH is involved in blood pressure control in the body. ADH is also involved in the functioning of the kidney, in its ability to reabsorb or to secrete water. So overall, ADH has very significant functions in the body in regulating the normal day-to-day activities of the body. So we'll look at them one after the other, the various functions of ADH in the body. Now we begin by looking at ADH effect on the kidney. Now, ADH is one hormone that has a very, very significant effect on the kidney, particularly in the area of the kidney's maintenance or regulation of the amount of fluid that is excreted or that is conserved by the body. You know that the major route of water loss in the body is through the kidney. So that means if there is need for the fluid to be conserved, ADH swings into action for fluid or for water to be conserved in the body. Now, what happens is that when there is need, maybe there's a state of dehydration or there's a state of hypovolemia, or when there's a reduction in blood volume, which naturally will now translate to a reduction in the blood pressure, what happens is that the antidiuretic hormone secretion is triggered. So there's a positive feedback to the hypothalamus and then to the pituitary for the secretion of ADH. So once ADH is secreted into the body, is transported towards the kidney, what ADH does is that it acts on the collecting duct of the kidney by opening up the water channels on the cells of the collecting duct. And these water channels, what they do is that they allow solute-free water to be reabsorbed into the circulation from the glomerular filtrate. And so with that, water is conserved and then the person passes concentrated urine. So that's how ADH acts to conserve water in the body, and that's how it regulates water. Now, in a situation where there is water overload in the body and there is need for water to be excreted, there is a negative feedback to the hypothalamus and to the pituitary to cut off the release or the secretion of ADH into the circulation. And so with that, in ADH is absent or reduced minimally in the circulation. And so with that, the water channels on the collecting duct remain closed. And so when the water channels remain closed, there is no reabsorption of water into the circulation. So the water from the glomerular filtrate is allowed to flow out. So that means in the presence of ADH, the individual produces produces concentrated urine, while in the absence of ADH, the individual produces dilute urine. So that's how ADH functions to regulate body water as well as hydration state, as well as um, 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 the urine concentration as well. So that's basically how ADH gets involved in water conservation and water homeostasis. And then also, ADH is involved in the regulation of blood pressure as well. Now, how is that? When there is a state of hypovolemia, that means low blood volume, what happens is that low blood volume has effect on the blood pressure as well. So when there's low blood volume, there's also low blood pressure. And so in the process of that, the baroreceptors, particularly on the left atrium or the carotid artery or the aortic arc in the heart, detect that there is a reduction in the arterial blood volume. And when there's a reduction in the blood volume, it affects the rate at which the heart is pumping. The rate will be slow, which will translate into low blood pressure. And so with this low blood volume, there is now low blood pressure. And so these baroreceptors will now transmit this signal to the vagus nerve, which will now in turn send signal directly to the hypothalamus and to the pituitary to stimulate the release of vasopressin from the posterior pituitary. Now, when vasopressin is released, what happens is that the vasopressin released will now act on the arterioles to constrict the blood vessel. And when the blood vessel is now constricted, there is increase in blood pressure. And so with that, blood pressure restored, is restored. So that vasoconstriction, what it does that it restores blood vessels, the blood pressure. Now, while vasopressin, ADH is acting as in the capacity of vasopressin, constricting blood vessels, ADH will also move on the collecting duct of the kidney to conserve water. With that, the blood volume is brought to normal. The blood pressure is also restored. So that's how ADH functions to restore blood volume and as well as restoring blood pressure. So that's that. And then also in restoration of blood volume as well, ADH, apart from acting on the blood vessels and acting on the collecting duct of the kidney, ADH also has the ability to act on the skin. So when ADH acts on the skin, it reduces perspiration. And so when perspiration is reduced, there's also reduce of fluid from the skin, all in the bid to conserve water. So you see that ADH is a very important hormone when it comes to water or water homeostasis or water balance.